The images that show the evacuation of British nationals from Sudan made headlines across the UK. The images that show humanity in what was a desperate situation. Memories forever ingrained in those trying to get out of Sudan. And for the military personnel from the UK Commando Force who took part in the non-combatant evacuation operation at the end of April, it's remembering where they were when they first got the call they were being deployed and not quite knowing what would happen next.
We were working with the partner force as a defence operation, and we got the phone call at 1 o'clock in the morning, at which point we were called back to 4-2 Commando. Being part of the fleet contingent troop, we're always held at a high readiness, so therefore we were able to get all our kit and equipment very quickly so we could link up with 40 Commando.
Over 2 months on from the evacuation mission, fighting between Sudan's armed forces and the rapid support forces continues. It's still an uncertain situation, and the ceasefire that was in place for the UK NEO to begin was uncertain too. It was Taunton-based 40 Commando that ran the Rapid Extraction Task Force.
So from our tactical position, we always want to try and get as close as we can to the people who need our help. So for us, initially we looked at areas as close to Khartoum as we possibly could, because that's where the maximum concentration of people were that needed our assistance. We landed on Wadi Sidna airfield, which was just to the northwest of Khartoum, to enable people to get to us from areas across Sudan, but principally from Khartoum while that ceasefire held. It was ultimately an operation about people. We had people who went forward to try and help as many people as they possibly could, but also it was about understanding with some real compassion that those people had been in a really difficult situation for over a week and they just needed help. That came from commandos who flew forward with people from right across defence, working with our international partners to establish the conditions initially for some calm, for some support, for those people who went all the way from being just 5 days old to 92 in the people that we extracted, and getting them from Khartoum to a place of safety that for us in the UK was back to Cyprus.
An evacuation handling centre was established where personnel worked tirelessly to get as many British passport holders onto military flights out of Sudan.
We saw a wide variety of people coming through, and it was hard to see. Sometimes you saw very young children. I've seen people again in a lot of distress, very desperate, and you needed to be mentally prepared for that. It's not just a case of going in an aggressive format. You need to think about how you interact with them and understand their viewpoint, especially when things were getting a little bit tense. If they were having to stay there for a little bit longer, the flights maybe were a little bit later, understand their distress in all of it.
As part of the UK Commando Force, it's a Commando Logistic Regiment that, as you would expect, provide all the logistical support to these operations, whether it's kit and equipment or medical assistance.
I am in the role 1 currently, so PHTT, that stands for Pre-Hospital Treatment Team. When we were in Sudan, we were out on the airfield, so we used the air hangar to set up our kit and equipment. So everything that we have here, we took with us, barring the tent pretty much, and we just set up inside one of the workshops in the air hangar. We saw over 200 casualties, 200 patients, and all kinds of things. So the most common thing by far was heat illness, heat stroke. We saw a lot of children, pregnant ladies, which again, more unusual for military medicine. Members of our team all had different skill sets, and we all kind of came together to provide as best medical support as we could. It was in quite a desperate situation, so you just had to be flexible, I think, and be ready to adapt where needed. I mean, there was multiple occasions where the lights and all the power would go out, which obviously was a bit tricky when you're treating patients, and at one point the ceiling caved in. So again, that was quite tricky. So it is, yeah, it was just being adaptive, I think, and knowing your team and working together, really.
In this type of fast-moving situation, being versatile was crucial.
Being able to move, respond at very quick order, accept that you're not going to know everything straight away, but work it out as you go along, and whatever the problem is in front of you, find the solution quickly and make sure that you can support the men and women of the Commando Force and the people, the civilians that were actually there to support and help. In terms of what we deployed everything from water rations based here in the UK and equipment that we'd already had pre-positioned in Cyprus, all the way from those basic life support material, all the way through to specific and specialist items that were needed forward, things like wheelchairs, baby food, women's sanitary products, everything that was needed forward. And because a lot of that hadn't necessarily been anticipated and wasn't necessarily available, it really meant that at really short notice we needed to find that stuff, get it together and move it forward, just so it could be there just in time for the people that needed it.
There was also assistance and evacuations from Port Sudan, and in total 2,450 people from over 20 countries were evacuated.
All of this is about theatre entry forces, this is about very high readiness forces, and we train our people to be able to deal with that level of uncertainty. What was most impressive from my perspective was watching very, very junior people fly into a situation of extraordinary uncertainty and immediately use compassion to support some people who've been through a really, really difficult time and give everything they could in support of them. We flew into a situation that even, we enjoy the weather here in Somerset, but it was 48 degrees on the ground. We flew in with minimal support, but everything we did have, we orientated that towards those that needed our support on the ground. So all of that meant that we were extremely busy early. We managed to get people on the very first plane that we flew in with, and we managed to get a really high drumbeat of evacuations going as quickly as we could, as soon as we could, for as long as we were able to do so.
UK Commando Forces train and prepare for all kinds of eventualities and situations. Generally, these troops are ready to go anywhere in the world with less than 48 hours notice. And in the case of Sudan, just a few hours notice to get to people in their hour of need. Bryony Williams, Forces News.